Meanwhile, in other ABC news, young Jimmy Kimmel's coming back to television.
Jon Stewart, Stephen Colbert, and Seth Meyers are celebrating Jimmy Kimmel's return to TV. On September 22nd, the Walt Disney Company announced in a statement that after having thoughtful conversations with Jimmy, the decision was reached to bring back Jimmy Kimmel Live on Tuesday, following the show's suspension over comments the comedian made about the man accused of fatally shooting Charlie Kirk.
Disney is bringing him back on the air tomorrow. ABC says in a statement that we made the decision last week to suspend production to avoid further inflaming a tense situation at an emotional moment. But now, after having thoughtful conversations with Jimmy, the ABC says we reached the decision to return the show on Tuesday. So Kimmel's getting back to work.
Wow, Brian, that is significant, especially given that some of the players outside of Disney in a corporate setting like Nexstar and Sinclair, they essentially have deals that allowed them to preempt his show, and that's part of the reason that it was suspended.
Yeah.
Did y'all really think we weren't going to talk about Jimmy Kimmel?
I support Jimmy Kimmel.
Someone's got to step up. Enough. We're not going to bow.
I think Jimmy Kimmel's terrible. You know what suspended him? His talent. You know what else? His ratings.
Disney issued a surprise update this afternoon. Kimmel will be back on the air tomorrow night. The company said they suspended production last week to avoid further inflaming a tense situation at an emotional moment for our country.
Do we know how they might react to this?
We don't, and that becomes the big question now. Will these local station affiliates choose to air Jimmy Kimmel Live, or will they continue to protest the comedian, even though the network is bringing him back nationwide? ABC does gently chastise Kimmel in this statement. The statement says, quote, "The decision to suspend him, we made it because we felt some of the comments were ill-timed and thus insensitive." So they're very gently saying they disagreed with Kimmel last week, but obviously they're bringing him back as of tomorrow.
Late-night hosts who showed support for Kimmel last week condemning ABC's decision to preempt the show were happy to hear the latest update. Jon Stewart announced Kimmel's return in the beginning of his Daily Show monologue on Monday, leading to a roar of applause from the audience.
Meanwhile, in other ABC news, young Jimmy Kimmel's coming back to television.
Adding they thought some of Jimmy's comments were ill-timed and insensitive. This morning, before the news broke, The View broke its silence on the suspension drama.
No one silences us.
Both shows share the same network, ABC, and parent company, Disney.
The government cannot apply pressure to force someone to be silenced.
So the headline everyone's buzzing about right now is that ABC has officially reinstated Jimmy Kimmel after his suspension. Yes, he's back on the schedule, the show is rolling again, and Disney is treating it like the storm has passed. But here's the real twist. Millions of viewers still can't watch him. And that's the part most people aren't talking about. Because while ABC flipped the switch, its two biggest affiliate groups, Sinclair and Nexstar, flat out refused to carry Kimmel's return. And those aren't small players. Together, they cover nearly a quarter of the households in America. That means you can technically put Jimmy Kimmel Live back on the air. But if you live in a market where Sinclair or Nexstar runs the local ABC station, you're staring at replacement programming instead. For a late-night host with nearly 20 years at the desk, that's not a comeback. It's a fractured broadcast. And this is what makes the story so layered. Everyone knows about the suspension. Kimmel's monologue on Charlie Kirk, the backlash, the FCC heat, and the abrupt yanking of the show. That's the main news cycle. But the new development, the one shaking advertisers and insiders, is that affiliates have drawn a line in the sand. They're telling Disney and ABC that corporate reinstatement doesn't matter if the ground-level distribution refuses to play ball. It's a reminder of how fragile broadcast power really is. For decades, networks assumed affiliates would fall in line. Now we're watching the exact opposite. Affiliates are flexing their leverage, advertisers are moving budgets, and viewers are left wondering what return even means when the show is missing from entire regions of the country. So yes, Jimmy Kimmel is back. But the real story is how this so-called comeback has exposed deeper cracks inside ABC's ecosystem. Cracks that NBC, CBS, and even digital platforms are watching closely. Because when affiliates rebel, it doesn't just shake one program, it shakes the entire model of late-night television. What makes this return so unusual is that it isn't being decided by ABC's corporate offices in New York or Disney's boardrooms in Burbank. It's being decided by the affiliates, the local station owners who actually broadcast the show into homes across the country. And that's where the real power shift is happening. Sinclair Broadcast Group and Nexstar Media, two of the largest affiliate operators, control dozens of ABC stations nationwide. Together, they account for nearly 25% of the network's reach. When they announced they wouldn't be airing Kimmel's comeback, it instantly transformed a simple reinstatement into a crisis. Because without those affiliates, you don't have a true national broadcast. You have a patchwork of markets where the show appears in some places and vanishes in others. This rebellion matters for three big reasons. First, it undercuts ABC's authority. For decades, networks dictated programming, and affiliates followed suit. Now Sinclair and Nexstar are openly breaking that chain, signaling that local interests and reputational risk outweigh network loyalty.
Earlier, the ACLU announced 400 celebrities, including Jennifer Aniston, Tom Hanks, and Meryl Streep, had signed an open letter condemning Kimmel's suspension.
This morning, I'm canceling my Disney Plus. I'm trying to say with the pocketbook that I do not support what they're doing with Jimmy.
I just canceled my Disney Plus and Hulu subscriptions.
ET has learned that Jimmy's staff members did not have to be in the office today, but were already being paid for the week.
It would be very hard to go back when your parent company does you the way that they just did Jimmy.
Second, it directly impacts advertisers. Brands pay premium rates for national reach, not fractured distribution. If a quarter of households can't see the show, those ad buys instantly lose value. And third, it sends a message to talent across ABC. If affiliates won't back the flagship late-night host, what does that mean for everyone else? Critics are already comparing this to the early battles of cable versus broadcast, when control slipped from the big three networks. The difference here is that the fracture isn't technological, it's political, financial, and cultural, all colliding at once. And while ABC insists Kimmel's show is back, the affiliates are proving that the network no longer controls its own destiny. This is why NBC is watching so closely. Every market ABC loses becomes an opportunity for NBC to present itself as the safer, more stable home for talent and advertisers. And that's not just theory. Several sponsors have already shifted budgets, preferring consistency over chaos. So when we say millions can't watch Kimmel, it's not just an inconvenience, it's a warning shot. Affiliates have found their voice, and ABC is learning the hard way that reinstating a host doesn't guarantee anyone will actually see him. Inside ABC, the bigger fallout isn't about ratings, it's about trust. Staffers who worked on Jimmy Kimmel Live say the suspension blindsided them. Tapings were canceled at the last minute, producers learned details from social media, and crew members were left scrambling without answers. That kind of silence does long-term damage. It tells employees that no matter how many years they've put in, decisions can be made overnight without explanation. This culture of unpredictability has spilled across the network. Producers at other shows, from Good Morning America to The View, are privately questioning whether their teams would be protected if controversy landed on their doorstep. Even scripted stars tied to ABC's primetime lineup have raised concerns with agents about contract renewals, worried that the network's leadership could undermine years of stability in one move. Critics inside the industry haven't held back either. Media analysts have called the suspension stupid, not because Kimmel was untouchable, but because ABC mishandled the optics. They could have quietly edited the monologue, issued a statement, or managed it behind the scenes. Instead, the abrupt removal created a firestorm, magnified by affiliates refusing to carry the comeback. What was meant as a short-term fix has spiraled into a long-term reputational hit. Advertisers have noticed too. National sponsors thrive on stability.
Over the weekend, Jimmy's cousin Sal, a writer and performer on the show, teased more drama ahead.
There are a couple bombshells still there. Everything's going to be just fine.
The president, meanwhile, has been on an anti-Kimmel media blitz at the White House.
He was terrible.
On Air Force One.
He's got no talent, and he's got no ratings.
And at yesterday's memorial for Charlie Kirk.
The same commentators who this week are screaming fascism were implying that Charlie Kirk deserved what happened to him.
He didn't say anything that nobody else didn't say. I think he'll be back on the air.
Consistent airings, predictable audiences, and reliable hosts. The sense that ABC can't guarantee any of those right now is enough to spook brands into shifting their budgets. A pause in ad buys might sound temporary, but in an environment where NBC is actively courting both talent and sponsors, every delay becomes a lost opportunity. All of this leaves ABC facing a trust deficit on two fronts: internally with its staff and externally with its advertisers. Reinstating Kimmel might look like a reset, but behind the scenes, morale is shaky, sponsors are cautious, and the network's leadership is seen as reactionary rather than strategic. So while the public headline is Kimmel is back, the inside story is far more fragile. Because once trust erodes, it's nearly impossible to rebuild. And that's the exact position ABC finds itself in now. While ABC is tangled in damage control, NBC has been moving like a network with a clear playbook. The timing couldn't be better. CBS has already confirmed that Stephen Colbert is winding down, which leaves a huge gap in the late-night field. Add ABC's fractured reinstatement of Kimmel, and NBC suddenly looks like the only stable anchor left in the space. NBC executives have quietly framed themselves as the network that protects its stars. The pitch to talent is simple. We don't panic, we stand by our people. That line resonates with writers, correspondents, and producers who've watched ABC stumble. Even behind the scenes, insiders say NBC has reached out to ABC veterans, offering contracts that emphasize stability and creative freedom. For a late-night industry rattled by uncertainty, that message is powerful. Advertisers are following the same path. Sponsors who once saw ABC as a safe buy are now shifting budgets to NBC, choosing the environment that looks less volatile. For brands, it isn't about comedy. It's about predictability. NBC's ability to guarantee national coverage without affiliates breaking ranks is a selling point that ABC simply can't match right now. And then there's Peacock. NBC isn't treating this as just a television opportunity. By pairing its late-night roster with streaming distribution, it's making sure audiences can find familiar faces both on broadcast and online. That dual strategy captures younger viewers who skip cable altogether and older audiences still loyal to late-night traditions. ABC, tied to Disney Plus's family-friendly branding, has struggled to replicate that balance. Critics are already calling this a turning point. NBC consolidating both legacy broadcasting and digital reach at the exact moment ABC looks weakest. It's not just about one host or one show. It's about shaping the narrative of who owns late night in the next decade. And right now, NBC is presenting itself as the natural successor while ABC fights to explain why its reinstated host isn't even visible in entire swaths of the country. What's playing out with Kimmel isn't just another late-night controversy. It's a reflection of how fragile the broadcast system has become. For decades, ABC was seen as a pillar of consistency, with late-night shows acting as cultural glue. Now, its biggest name is technically back, yet whole regions of the country can't watch him. That kind of disconnect forces viewers to question whether network television can still deliver on its promise of nationwide reach. The cultural impact is already clear.
And we don't know, obviously, all of the considerations that went into this, Brian. But I would say leaders, obviously, at ABC and Disney have had the benefit of a few days of feedback.
Yeah. Including from Disney employees who were very disturbed, including from Hollywood stars and showrunners, the kind of people Disney wants to work with, and from free speech groups, politicians, even some Republican politicians like Ted Cruz. We know the condemnation of Disney has been widespread.
Viewers in markets where Kimmel is blacked out are heading online to find clips, commentary, or even rival shows. This accelerates a trend that was already reshaping late night. Audiences drifting toward digital-first platforms where creators control their own distribution. Instead of sitting down at 11:30, fans are catching highlights on YouTube or turning to podcasts that never worry about affiliates pulling the plug. Critics warn that this shift could be permanent. Once viewers adapt to alternative platforms, they rarely come back. That's why NBC's hybrid approach matters so much. They're not just filling Kimmel's void. They're redefining what late night looks like for the next generation. By blending broadcast credibility with streaming flexibility, NBC positions itself as the network that bridges both worlds. For ABC, the cultural fallout is harder to manage. Reinstating Kimmel without full distribution doesn't just frustrate audiences, it erodes the brand's identity. The network built its reputation on consistency and national visibility. Now, it risks being seen as fractured, inconsistent, and vulnerable to pressure from outside forces. And that perception spreads fast. When networks lose cultural authority, they don't just lose viewers, they lose influence. Sponsors move their dollars, talent takes their ideas elsewhere, and the broader industry starts treating the network as an afterthought. That's the deeper danger here. The Kimmel suspension, the affiliates' rebellion, and the shaky return all signal that ABC is no longer the late-night authority it once was. So the fallout isn't just about one comedian, it's about whether ABC can still command cultural trust in a world where stability is everything. Industry analysts haven't minced words when it comes to ABC's handling of the Kimmel saga. Many describe the reinstatement as symbolic at best, pointing out that announcing a comeback means very little when affiliates are still refusing to air the show. It's the classic case of winning a headline, but losing the ground game. Insiders add that the network missed multiple opportunities to contain the crisis. Instead of addressing the controversial monologue quietly, ABC allowed the suspension to dominate the news cycle. By the time they tried to walk it back, the affiliates had already drawn their own line, and advertisers were second-guessing their buys. Media critics have called it a reaction-first, strategy-later approach that exposed deeper weaknesses in Disney's broadcast division. Agents representing talent at ABC have also spoken out, warning that the incident has created a chilling effect across the company. If one of the longest-serving late-night hosts can be sidelined overnight, other stars question whether their careers are safe under the same management. This is especially damaging at a time when networks rely on talent loyalty to compete with streaming giants. Financial analysts are equally blunt.
The comedian then poked fun at the boycott campaign against Disney.
I want to say this seriously. That campaign that you all launched, pretending that you were going to cancel Hulu, while secretly racing through 4 seasons of Only Murders in the Building, that really worked. Congratulations. Wasn't it interesting to try and figure out all the tentacles Disney has in your daily life? It's one thing to swear off cruises, but the Avengers? Nah.
Some frame the saga as proof that Disney should consider selling ABC altogether, noting that broadcast now represents a small fraction of the company's revenue compared to parks, films, and streaming. From their perspective, the Kimmel controversy doesn't just hurt ratings. It highlights how outdated ABC's place in Disney's portfolio has become. The harshest criticism, however, focuses on precedent. Commentators warn that if affiliates can successfully block a reinstated host, it sets a dangerous model for the future. Late-night shows have always thrived on sharp commentary, but if every monologue has to pass through corporate caution and affiliate approval, the entire format could lose its edge. And for ABC, being the network that stumbled into creating that precedent could end up defining its legacy in the worst possible way. So where does this leave Jimmy Kimmel, ABC, and the entire late-night landscape? On paper, Kimmel is back. The lights are on, the monologue is delivered, and the show is officially reinstated. But in reality, millions of households never saw his return. Affiliates blocked the broadcast, advertisers hedged their bets, and viewers are left with the sense that something permanent has shifted. NBC, meanwhile, looks stronger by the day. With Colbert stepping down at CBS and ABC unable to guarantee nationwide coverage, NBC is positioning itself as both the last stable broadcast giant and the first to fully merge late night with streaming. By contrast, ABC looks fractured, more focused on damage control than innovation. Critics say this moment will be remembered less as Kimmel's comeback and more as the turning point where affiliates proved they could challenge the network itself. And that precedent is bigger than one comedian. It changes how talent negotiates contracts, how advertisers allocate budgets, and how viewers decide whether to stick with television or migrate to digital platforms permanently. For Disney, the dilemma is clear. Does keeping ABC make sense when its brand is tied to family-friendly storytelling on Disney+, billion-dollar franchises at the box office, and theme parks that drive global revenue? A struggling broadcast arm weighed down by controversy may not fit that future. And for audiences, the bigger question is this: what does late night even mean in 2025? If a host can be suspended overnight, affiliates can refuse to air his return, and advertisers can vanish at the first sign of turbulence, can viewers still trust network television to deliver bold commentary at all? Or has that role already shifted to streaming platforms, podcasts, and independent creators who answer to no boardroom? Jimmy Kimmel's reinstatement may look like a resolution, but in many ways, it's just the beginning of a deeper reckoning for ABC, and perhaps for the entire late-night tradition.